know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotta Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
Coming to you live from his dream home in Los Angeles.
I wouldn't say this is my dream home.
Yes, welcome to Punk Lotta Pod. This is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. And today's episode is centered around an album released in the year 2009. A mere 16 years ago. But before we get into that, patreon.com/punklottapod is where you get all of our weekly bonus audio. Where last week, what did we do?
We did a bracketology, which is sort of our March Madness bracket rundown of punk records from that any given year, and pitting them in head-to-head combat until there is only one winner. That is usually telegraphed from the beginning of the bracket. But as many sports seasons go, I think.
16 albums enter, only one will leave. Very Thunderdome-y. I wish I could bring up oh yeah, this is just like how Duke got knocked out by Houston or whatever. I only half barely know what happened, and that's purely through my job requiring me to watch television all day long. So, not a basketball guy. Just don't follow it. Not for me. Yes. So if you sign up for that Patreon tier, you get all sorts of bonus audio. You could also sign up at the $5 tier, which is our producer tier, which gives you your name said on the show every single week. So let's shout out our producers now. So thank you to Dave Brown, host of the podcast One Band, Five Songs. Thank you to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio. Thank you to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. The D-bands are finally coming to an end. And shout out to Zach in Oregon, who just saw Refused and Quicksand. And I think his takeaway was, Quicksand were great. Refused were good too. Which I thought was very funny for the farewell tour of Refused to be they're an afterthought.
And Dennis was there.
Yeah. That tier also gets you access to a once a month producer only bonus audio where we choose one EP to discuss. And I think we have a winner. We'll go ahead and say that. This month's EP will be Hospitals by the band Off With Their Heads. So look out for that probably next week after this episode drops. And then you can join our $10 tier where you get to choose the album we devote an entire episode to. And yeah, all that's punklottapod@gmail.com. Oh, let's say this at the top in case people missed this. We're planning on doing a mailbag episode. So if you want to get your questions read or heard on the show, send us an email at punklottapod@gmail.com. You could DM us on all the social medias. I'm going to make a post on all of those so that we can have that out there so we can collect some questions. We have a voicemail line. If you want us to play your voicemail, that's 202-688-PUNK. Got a couple options for you to get questions to us. So if we get enough for it, we will do it. If we wind up not getting enough, we'll just sprinkle the questions out throughout episodes going forward. But yeah, that'll be fun. I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping we get enough to put one together. So, all right. So this week we were talking about an album released in the year 2009, and it was your turn to select this record. But before we get into that record, let's talk about the year in general. So 2009, where were you?
Well, it depends on when in 2009. 2/3 of the year I was in college. And the other third I was sitting in the front yard stealing our neighbor's wireless.
In the summer?
Yeah.
Outside in the daytime where you can barely see the computer screen? I remember because I came over one time and you were doing that, and I was just like, this is miserable. What are you doing? That's just how bad our internet was at our parents' house.
Yeah. Yep. And our neighbor was fortunately not home and hadn't locked his internet yet. So I was still able to steal his Wi-Fi.
What's funny is we used to be able to steal it from inside our house, just right by the window. And he must have moved his router to a different spot in the house. Because it got weaker that summer specifically, I feel like.
Yeah.
Or he put something in there that blocked the signal. Yeah.
But 2009, I also went on a camping trip to Kentucky with some of my bandmates from my high school metalcore band, and we came back and started our hardcore band, which you very soon joined. We recorded 2 songs in their basement that weekend, just quick little rough demos, and probably threw them on MySpace or something, because we still would have had MySpace then.
Yeah.
Just pre-Bandcamp, just probably early days of Bandcamp, but nobody was really using it yet. But
yeah.
Then we got active as a band 2010.
Yeah, I feel like that's when I think started playing with y'all.
Yeah.
Because I had just moved from the house that I was living at the time, which I now am currently living at, but I was living with roommates and they bought a house, so I moved with them to that new house, and that house had this like big like building, like outbuilding. I don't even know how you describe that thing.
Shed. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was like as big as a house almost.
It was huge.
It was awesome. I loved that thing. I mean, it was hot as hell in the summer and cold in the winter.
Yeah.
It was not insulated very well, but it was a great jamming place. I don't know how loud it was inside the house. Roommates didn't really complain though.
No.
They probably heard it, but it was like you could just turn the TV up and you'd probably cover it up enough. But
yeah, we never had any complaints from any neighbors.
No, really not. I think because it was like just far enough from the next houses to the side, because there was like a big like open area between houses on the side, maybe across the street. But even then, I never heard any complaints. So that was a good spot.
We didn't practice past.
Yeah, we were conscious
anyway. I don't know why we weren't booking shows there.
Yeah, that would have been the thing. We talked about it. But
we'd have to clean it up.
Yeah, to make room for people. But yeah.
And yeah, it would only be really comfortable for people to come to a few seasons out of the year. But
yeah, spring and fall. That's about it.
I think that's why we didn't do it.
Yeah.
Really seriously pursue it, because we practiced in it and we're like, this is miserable.
Yeah, those summers were rough. The cold was cold, but I would have taken the cold over the heat for those practices. Rough stuff. Yeah. But it was fun. Yeah, I had failed out of college at that point and had moved in with some coworkers when I was working at the old Barnes and Noble. And yeah, I don't think I was probably working in the music department a fair amount. I don't think I was a lead yet at that point. So yeah, just working mostly part-time, because I didn't get a full-time until I became a lead. So yeah, just working, and then I'd come see you at college.
Yeah.
I was dating someone up there at the time. I think in 2009 we were still dating, maybe. I think we were, yeah. So that'd be an excuse to go up there too. But yeah, we were young. I was probably 2009. I'd probably 22, 23, depending on the month.
I turned 19 that year, so
I would be 23 then. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, little period of time where we were fairly active too, going to shows a lot with our group of friends, seeing a lot of bands. Maybe some we'll talk about here. But yeah, 2009. Let's see. Let's look at, what do you want to do? Let's look at the albums from 2009 before we talk about the ones you almost selected.
Yeah, we'll look at the charts.
Yeah. So, according to RateYourMusic.com's punk charts, the number 1 punk record of 2009 is Humbug by the Arctic Monkeys.
Sure. Okay. Never going to care about that band.
Is it Snow Patrol?
It's not Snow Patrol.
Also, the XX released their first record, XX. I listened to that one at work because it was one of the in-store plays, and I took that CD home and probably listened to it once after that. What are some big records though? What are some
21st Century Breakdown by Green Day?
Yeah. I mean, it's also worth mentioning Brand New Eyes by Paramore as well. That record features the smash hit songs. Duh. I don't know. I don't know them by name. I know there are some songs on that record, but I don't know the names of them. I think the next record had more, but
I don't know. Yeah, actually, I don't know anything off that one.
I know there is a big song on that record, but I can't remember which one it is. I mean, I guess I could go to Spotify Paramore and just see what's in the top and see which one has that butterfly on the cover. The cover? The Only Exception and All I Wanted are in the top 5. So you probably know them.
Yeah.
900 million plays. Yeah, you probably know that. 500 million. But
there's definitely a lot of stuff on here that we talked about on our bracketology, so I'm not going to double dip. I guess kind of like singling out the stuff that stands out that we otherwise didn't talk about, good or bad. What It Takes to Move Forward by Empire Empire is a pretty significant record for the Count Your Lucky Stars Midwest emo world.
I almost included that on our bracket, but I couldn't remember if I'd listened to it in full. So I was like, I'm going to skip this one.
Metric put that record out.
With the light bulb on it?
The light bulb on it. And that's the one that has... Oh, never mind. I
Does
thought
it
it was
have
the
that?
one... I thought it was going to be the one that has the song that was on in the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack, but it's not. It's not that
Yeah.
one.
Because Scott Pilgrim came out in 2010. So that would have been the next year. But yeah, I don't think it's that record. I think it's an older song, right?
Yeah, it might be.
The Deer Hunter, Act 3, Life and Death. Did we try and be Deer Hunter listeners at some point?
Maybe we tried to be receiving end of Sirens on listeners at one point. I don't remember ever trying to listen to the Deer Hunter.
I do. I think I listened to the first one, which I think is the 06 record. So I don't think I listened to the third one.
Scrambles by Bomb the Music Industry, certainly a pretty important record. Not one I like, but
It might be the record that is most similar to the Jeff Rosenstock solo. I feel like that record is kind of important to getting him to that next level. Man, I really wish he was not one of the most prominent punk musicians of the modern day. But he's just annoying in music and in real life. Very annoying online. Ugh. Manchester Orchestra released Mean Everything to Nothing. That CD was everywhere. That blue and white record where everybody's like, yeah, they're kind of punk. And it's like, they're not punk at all. I don't know why they're on this chart at all. It was like indie rock that appealed to emos is really what it was.
Time Waits for No Slave by Napalm Death. I
was gonna
almost considered that one.
I was gonna say we have
pick up another Napalm Death week.
We have 3 grind records in a row here. Napalm Death, Cattle Decapitation, and Agoraphobic Nosebleed are all back to back here on this chart. Out of those 3, I'd probably want to hear the Cattle Decap the most. We have a Thrice record that I don't know that anybody gives a shit about.
Yeah, nobody
Beggars?
cares about that one.
Oh, do you remember that after the Burial record?
Maybe.
Our bandmates were definitely listening to that record.
Yeah.
I mean, there's stuff, but nothing I listened to. Like if we're in the metalcore realm, we've got your Suicide Silences, your Architects, your The Devil Wears Pradas, your Killswitch Engages. This is the self-titled Killswitch Engage, which I think is the one where Jesse comes back. Is that where this record is? I don't remember how deep into the discography they go before Howard leaves again. He's still on this record. Okay, 02 to 12. That's when he was in the band. So they went with the self-titled for LP number 5. It's also the second self-titled record. Is it a re-recording of their first album with Howard instead of Jesse?
It might be. I feel like they might have done that.
Let's see. I'd compare tracks. No, it's different. Why would you do that? Weird. I don't know why they did that. Because it's different
They couldn't
songs.
think of a name.
Oh, I don't know. This is our new definitive album for This Is Who We Are Now. It's the Bob's Burgers. This Is Who I Am Now. New Junk Aesthetic by Every Time I Die. That's a fairly big record. We should do one of their records one day. They are very consistent, at least according to the users of Rate Your Music. They are all in the same range.
Something I probably would have been listening to around this time period. Why by Ditro. I think that's the last Ditro record. Yeah, it is. And then some of those guys went on to do 12XU and Baton Rouge. So Baton Rouge is like the non-screamy version of Ditro. Baton, I should say.
Baton Rouge.
I am going to Paris next week. Weirdly. And the only reason I didn't really consider this one was because I felt like it was crossing into birthday spanking territory. But I did really like that number 12 Looks Like You record that came out that year. I would be curious to revisit that one. But I was just like, I don't want to gamble like this. Especially when I know something like this is possibly going to be very annoying to you. And I want to save that kind of content.
That same year, Crash Love by AFI came out, and that was yes, I was actually dating this person at the time because they wanted me to hunt down the leak of this record because they couldn't find it on their usual haunts. I found it pretty quickly. This is the follow-up to December Underground.
Did they like it?
I think so, but like not as much. You know,
Yeah,
one
I
of
don't think
those-
anybody really likes that record.
I remember listening to it being like, this isn't bad. That was kind of my takeaway. I don't think the AFI like have any like truly awful records. I think the worst you could say about some of their stuff is like,
Like the first 2 records aren't just like music made by teenagers.
yeah.
Hatebreed slipping in their self-titled at record number 6.
You could tell me Hatebreed names every record as self-titled, and I'd believe it.
I think they do name every record like one word.
Yeah.
Nah, that's not true. But they have
Yeah.
Perseverance and Supremacy. Those are 2 one-word records.
Do you remember I Wrestled a Bear once?
Yeah.
They were like a meme band.
Yeah.
YouTube video, MySpace, yeah. And I remember like that video was fun and entertaining, and trying to listen to a whole album by them, being like, "Oh, this isn't good." It
Yeah,
doesn't
that was-
work when you have to listen to all of the record.
That was troll music.
Yeah.
For sure. They definitely got their hook on being, look at this.
Yeah. Gallows released Grey Britain. Is this still Frank? Has he left yet at this point? I think it is. I think he's still on this album. Frank. Yeah, he leaves in 2011, and then Wade from Alexis on Fire takes over for some fucking reason.
Because Alexis on Fire broke up.
That's true. I gotta do something. Matt and Kim released Grand, which has that like big song, right? Like that da, 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 that one. Da, 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 da. That's all Matt and Kim songs.
Yeah, it's not narrowing it down enough.
Off-key caterwauling. That's what Matt and Kim were, with clanky planky pianos. But I think that's the record that has that. They're like one big song. Daylight, I think is what it's called. Yes, it is.
And if you like off-key caterwauling and clanky planky guitars, there's a Dan Aykroyd record that was a lot of fun.
Cool record, kind of cool record. Supporting cast by Propagandy was released that year. Very thrashy.
The third of 4 comeback records by Mission of Burma. It's crazy that they have twice as many comeback records as they do original
Yeah.
records. But The Sound Must Be the Light came out in 2009. I remember that coming out. I remember that, seeing that around.
Yeah. Let's see. If it was my turn to choose from 2009, and just based off where we are currently in the list, what would I consider? Let's see. What looks good?
Jeffrey Lewis?
I mean, I like that Jeffrey Lewis record. That's not a bad one. That's probably one of his best records. I'm going to pick something off this page no matter what.
Can you talk about a Jeffrey Lewis record without a PowerPoint?
Yeah, I mean, that's what his concerts are. You know what? I did enjoy his set. When I saw him open...
Yeah, they were fun.
Yeah, you were there too. Yeah, they opened for... It was like a joint tour with AJJ, right?
Yeah.
And they do such different kinds of folk punk. Though, to be fair, Jeffrey Lewis considers himself anti-folk, which is like a different thing.
Yeah.
It's like a specific scene in New York. But that was a fun set.
I do think AJJ are probably more influenced by anti-folk.
Yeah, especially once they go electric. Like I think everything after like Knife Man feels like it's very anti-folk, like Holy Bible 2 and Christmas Island. Maybe that's why I don't like them. Okay, if I have to just choose what, from what I'm looking at right now on this page at this exact moment, I mean, I guess I could talk about Psyopus's Odd Senses, because for some reason I downloaded like a bunch of Psyopus CDs at one point and burned them and listened to them once, and then I was like, why did I do this? Very mathy grind, which is exactly what our audience would love for us to talk about. Previously, we have covered this year only 4 other times. So, episode 276, we did P.S. Eliot's Introverted Romance in Our Troubled Minds. In episode 207, we did Coalesce's Ox. Episode 167, we did Touche Amores to the Beat of a Dead Horse, and all 3 of those albums appear in our bracketology episode from last week. And then episode 48, we did Victor Fix the Sun's Person, Place, or Thing alongside NoFX's Cokie the Clown EP under our old album EP format. I think that Cokie the Clown EP might be one of the worst things we ever covered.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, very bad. And that Victor Fix the Sun record is not very good either. I liked it at the time when it was new, but for some reason it did not age well. It did not. All right, so what are some albums that you were considering for us to talk about?
So I sent you 4 records that I was
Yes.
considering. Your response was weird batch, to which I said, not that weird, just one weird one. So I'll start with the weird one. And
Yeah.
it was the first one I saw, and it was kind of like truthfully, it was like one of the first things I was really considering as I was going through the charts, because it was weird. 2009, I was thinking like, oh yeah, I know a lot of stuff that came out in 2009. I was 19 years old. I was very much paying attention to music as it was coming out on a weekly basis. I was probably downloading music on a nearly daily basis.
Yeah, definitely.
So I was thinking like, yeah, okay, this should be pretty easy to pick. And then as I'm going through the charts, I'm just like, no. Well, not that one. No. So an odd one that kind of piqued my interest was Forget and Not Slow Down by Reliant K, which was like their 5th record.
Was that one you had?
No.
Okay.
So my thought process was why it kind of stood out. I mean, the album cover jumped out to me because I remembered the Grand Design Buzz Grinder joke. Nice effort, Uncle Rico.
That's a good one.
And I was intrigued by it because Reliant K would have been a really important band to me as really early punk, preteen into early teen years, listening to Christian rock, and that being our introduction to punk, really. Reliant K is a really important band, and I feel like they're a band that we do have to talk about at some point on this show. We've never done it. We've never done any of their records.
And I think there's plenty there.
Yeah.
There's like 3 records we could possibly choose from their discography that I think would be interesting to talk about. There is one that like is worth talking about, but I feel like more as a jumping off point for the band.
Yeah. And so what interested me about this one was I've never heard it because I listened to the first 4, loved the first 3, didn't care for the 4th, gave up on that band, never heard this record or anything after it. And I thought it would be funny and interesting to talk about a band past the point where they lost me. That was a really important band to me. And to be like, did I miss something?
Well, can I say this? It is the highest rated Reliant K album on Rate Your Music.
It is considered their best by many.
How?
I don't know, because I started it. I got like 30 seconds into the first song, and then I was like, And then I started to kind of skim the song, and I was like, man, these lyrics are Jesus-y.
Oh,
just skimming it. It was like abrasively Christian.
Abrasive Christianity. Oh, God.
I was just like, I'm not going to listen to a worship record on this show. I'll do an earlier one because they at least have funny songs on those. So I gave up on that one. That was my reasoning, though, like why I picked that one. I was like, be interesting, but I think I got my thought experiment out of the way, and if we do a Reliant K record in the future, it's going to be one that I actually stand a chance of enjoying,
or at least can get some nostalgia out of.
Yeah. I mean, truthfully, I think any Reliant K record, if I listen to it now, I'm gonna be riding mostly on nostalgia for the enjoyment.
And piano-based Reliant K that's rough.
Yeah, it was the thing. Matt played the piano, and then it just took over more and more.
That starts with I think. Like, there was piano stuff on, like, Two Lefts Don't Make a Right, but...
Yeah, is the one where they were just like, we're going to do a piano rock record.
We're Binfolds now.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
We're Rocket Summer.
Yeah. Ugh. We're Jack's Mannequin. That might be too early. No, that's not too early. Jack's Mannequin was a little earlier than this, but...
I considered the Punch self-titled record.
I thought this was a weird choice, mainly because a weird choice for you. Not so much like that the record's a weird record.
Really? I liked Punch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we did some... Did we do Punch? We did Super Unison. I don't think we did any Punch.
Yeah, I listened to Punch a fair bit in college. Like, I've heard pretty much all of their records, but I couldn't do this one. I was actually kind of leaning towards this one, but it's not on Spotify. So I was like, I'm not going to
weird.
This one.
It's on Bandcamp, but yeah.
We'll do a different Punch record someday probably, but
why is that one not on there? Huh.
I couldn't find it. Maybe it is. I just didn't look hard enough, but it didn't come up.
Yeah, it's not there. That's weird. Must be a licensing thing.
And I considered Strange Spring Air by Shinobu, which
We've
is
been threatening
one of,
Shinobu.
which is the one of the two that's kind of like the
yeah.
one for Shinobu to do. It would be timely because they're playing shows again. They just played Growing Up is Dumb.
I think Mike Huguenot has new music coming out too, so that's also a little timely. Hopefully it's not another instrumental record.
And this one, if the Punch record, the Punch record not being available on Spotify, kind of put this one next in line. So I think it was between this one and the one that I ended up picking more seriously. And when I initially sent them to you, the one that I did go with was the one that you suggested, said would probably make the most sense to do. And I think I decided to go with that one because not only like was it like kind of your pick of the 4 that I suggested, it feels like the record that we have the best conversation potential. I think there's more to talk about on the record that we are talking about. I don't know that there's really anything to talk about with Shinobu other than it's Mike Huguenot and he has been around. But I don't know. Like, I think if we do a Mike Huguenot band, like I might actually prefer to just do a Hard Girls record.
I definitely spent more time with Hard Girls than I did Shinobu. Yeah, I mean, now is the time to do Shinobu. That would be a good moment to do it. Because we talked about doing 10 Thermidor when we did a later year. And it's a good record. I did like it at the time, but I don't think it's the one that people go to.
It's not the one for most other people, but it is the one I've spent the most time with.
Because it was new. That's the one you wait for them. And also it like came out after the Hard Girls stuff. So it was like a fun, like, oh, this is what else he was doing at the time. And it was like, oh, it's just more Hard Girls. They're very similar bands. Yeah. We should do something one day. I think I agree with you though. I think Hard Girls is the more fun band to talk about, but we'll get there eventually. That's the thing about this show. We've done 300. This is episode 328. And I feel like we still have hundreds of albums that we could choose for future episodes.
There's tons of bands. All 4 of these bands that I suggested are pretty notable bands that we've never talked about in depth on the show.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot. The fount is overflowing with blood.
My cup runneth over.
There's a fountain filled with blood. Well, let's get into the actual albums. So I gave you the year 2009, and you selected Dream Homes by Dear Landlord.
I live in hell. I live in a basement. I live in a garage with no windows. My life is wasted. I live in hell with the dark Christians. They're white for parents for the first shot and it's taken. What does your dream home look like? What does your dream home look like? It'll take you years to even tell. And I've been sleeping well here in hell.
And some stats on the band. From Carbondale, Illinois. I don't have a year when they formed, but this was released July 3rd, 2009. It was released on No Idea Records, on vinyl and CD. No tapes yet. And the person on this record is Adam Fletcher on bass and vocals, Brad Lockesmo, Lokkesmoe. It's a Midwestern name. Don't know how to pronounce that. Lockesmo? On drums, Brett Hunter on guitar and vocals, and Zach Gontard on guitar and vocals as well. And this record was recorded, mixed, and mastered by Jacques Waite. All right, Dear Landlord. All right, first question. What made you choose this record?
You did. No, but
You selected it for your options.
yeah. You didn't really twist my arm that hard to pick this one.
Pick that one.
So I picked this one, like I said, because I think there's a lot to talk about with it. And I think my hesitation for it initially was, do I care that much about it?
Ooh.
And also I couldn't remember what the story was with the guy who went to prison. But you reminded me. I was like, yeah, all right, that feels fair. We did, we've done some heinous people on this show.
Yeah, I got the story on that one.
I feel okay doing this one.
Yeah,
Not,
I think we
not
should.
too weird.
We'll get into it.
We'll get into that. That's the later part of the story, I think.
Yeah.
But I think biggest reason for me for picking this one was my biggest question. We talked about this briefly on chat. Was what is the lasting legacy of this record? Because as I remember it, instant classic. Today, Dear Landlord has 12,000 monthly listeners on Spotify off of one LP. None of the EPs are on here, just the one LP. A band that is long dormant.
What was the number?
12,000 monthly listeners.
Okay.
So at least, 12,000 people are regularly listening to Dear Landlord.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Whoa. Okay, so I'm doing the similar artist thing right now. You said 12,000 monthly listeners on Dear Landlord. Let's just run down the fans also like. None More Black, 14,000. That feels fair. That feels about the same. They've been as inactive as long as Dear Landlord. Smoker Fire, 13,000. Again, similar, as inactive. They had a record in 2022. I don't think anybody cares, though. The Falcon, 13,000. Dead to Me, 32,000. And that makes sense.
More
They're a
active
little
band. Yeah.
They're a little bigger. Yeah. Here we go. Here's the test. The Copyrights, 9,000.
How many records does the Copyrights have?
A ton.
A ton.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 LPs, and has half the same band members. We'll get into that. I guess we could do American Steel, 8,000. Whoa. I mean, they've just not been super active, I guess. But Banner Pilot, 34,000. A little more active.
American Steel, far more active in the last 16 years.
Yeah.
Banner Pilot, who I always confuse with Dear Landlord.
Yeah. 34,000.
34,000. Wow.
Double. They have more records there, so people are listening to Banner Pilot. That is funny to me.
Yeah, we don't have to do all
Yeah, we
this,
don't do the
'cause
rest
we
of
know
it.
there's like D4, that's gonna be a lot. But like Horrorcore,
Still holding strong, I guess.
still a strong listener base.
Mm-hmm.
There's money in it.
God.
Give
We'll get
us
into that.
Horrorcore records.
We'll get into that more too, because I definitely, especially when we talk about what's happening with No Idea at this time, the same time period, and
But that tells me, when I saw that number, I was like, whoa, there are 12,000 30 to 50 year olds who are still listening to Dear Landlord on a regular basis.
16 years after it came out.
One LP. So that kind of answered a little bit of my, like, what is the standing, what is the lasting cultural impact of this record? People are still singing along and pointing their fingers in the car.
I do think it's worth noting. So Dillinger 4, we weren't going to name them, but like, look at their number. It's like, I closed it. I shouldn't have, but
32,000?
32,000, just like a little more than double. Well, I guess more like closer to triple, but still a band who has more albums is more important and is still revered, is not doing like crazy numbers more than that Dear Landlord record.
Lawrence Arms, almost 80,000. Most of these bands are in like the under 20,000, but it's like the 10 to 20,000 listeners.
Yeah. The Copyrights went through me because that's the one that's just like, it's the same people. It's very funny. Okay.
Off with their heads over 100,000 monthly listeners still.
That's a big one.
What?
Why? Still?
Nothing good past 2010.
Yeah. Again, that's a lot.
Does Ryan have like a bot farm or something?
Do you remember when you first would have heard this record?
Probably in 2009, not distinctly. It would have made waves in our friend circle.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much the kind of stuff that we were listening to, and more so, I think you, Corey, and Grant were listening to more than I was, because I wasn't part of the weekly hangs.
Yeah, you were
in 2009. I was in college, so
yeah.
And even that summer, I wasn't hanging out.
Yeah.
I didn't have a way to get up there.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why we wouldn't have done more stuff in the summer.
But so I would have heard it. Probably downloaded it, but I don't really remember having this record on my iTunes. I don't feel like it was something that was in any regular rotation. This record was inescapable, though.
So I might have a little bit clearer memory of this. So I remember when it came out, I remember it was hyped. Everybody was like, you got to hear this record. You got to hear it. It's so good. And they're like, it's people from Off With Their Heads. You know, I was deep in my Off With Their Heads phase at that point. You know, they had released From the Bottom in 2008. So I was listening to that record regularly. I was listening to tons of D4. You know, all of that like Midwest orgcore type stuff. Like I was all over all of that stuff. And this record came out, and I remember it was like immediate. Like people were like, holy shit, this record is great. I feel like Grant, who runs Bitter Melody, he told me about it. Even if he hadn't told me about it, I probably would have run across it not too long after that. Like it was very much in the wheelhouse of the type of stuff that we were listening to a lot at that point. I'd gone to Fest the year before. That was my first Fest. I saw them. I believe I saw them that year at Fest in 2009. I feel like I probably did, because that was the year it was just like me and Grant, and so it was like, and he was sick and losing his voice, so like we couldn't really do anything except like, I guess we'll go watch D Hoffnug at 1:00 in the Atlantic on a Sunday. We were all so tired, but like couldn't do anything. So we probably saw a lot that year. That's probably the same year I saw Menzingers and Polar Bear Club, like a lot of those bands. So yeah, it's just perfectly right in my wheelhouse. It was a big record. It was important at the time. It blew up right away. And then they just kind of became this band that like played Fest every single year. And like I'd go watch them some years I didn't, because this is the only record they put out. So they were playing the same basic set. And they would occasionally throw in some stuff from their splits, but not very often. People didn't know them as well. And sometimes those songs were on the record. So I remember seeing them one year. They were just like Juggalos, because it was a Halloween weekend. They were playing at 8 seconds. Sounded like shit, but it was 8 seconds. I probably saw them a few more times. We saw them live in Charlotte when they went on a tour. They went on tour with the Slow Death, and it was the same show that they combined the Dear Landlord Slow Death tour with the Off With Their Heads Dead to Me tour. And I remember that show being great. That whole show was so fun. So yeah, I saw Dear Landlord a couple times, and I just blasted this record all the time. You know, it was a record that I listened to tons and tons and tons. And then eventually it just like faded from rotation due to it. That's it. That's all I have is that LP and some splits. So I eventually would listen to it less and less, because that's just what happens when, you know, there's just one record from an artist. So yeah, Dear Landlord were one of the big ones. They were definitely part of that wave of stuff that I was listening to. And I agree with you. Where's our revival for this? I feel like we're on the cusp of it, but it hasn't happened yet. I don't know what that is. I don't know what we need to get this to happen. I don't think it's going to be based on an old band doing a big record, though. If anyone was going to do it, it'd be D4.
Yeah.
We're coming up on 20 years. I mean, we're still a couple years away from that, but like since the last D4 record, they've talked about how they write and like have done stuff, but nothing concrete has happened. But yeah, so yeah, right place, right time record came out at the exact right moment. That's probably why it still has that many monthly listeners.
She talks about herself, drinks like she might as well, smokes my cigarette just like it's her last. All kinds of anarchy, she sings a lot like me, and it echoes back under the other past downtown. She likes to watch the sun come up on Mars. She don't care if it ever makes sense, it almost always is the same. Screwing up her face, she raps like her with dying still like a rape thing. That's why I fight the way it went. One more night to kill things that leave us still waiting. A little more pocket, change and liquor store. She shakes like anyone strung out. She's almost done hoping for something else less like this within.
Well, let's get into the backstory of Dear Landlord, because to be honest, I don't think I knew anything. I knew the Off With Their Heads connection, and that was it. So Dear Landlord are essentially a supergroup, and let's do the members of what other bands they've been in. So Adam Fletcher and Brett Hunter were also in the Copyrights, still are. Brad was in the band Rivethead, so was Zach. So this band consists of half Rivethead, half Copyrights. But there's more. Brad is also in the Gateway District, Shallow Cuts, and the legendary San Diego Chargers. And Zach was also in Off With Their Heads, Houseboat, and The Slow Death. And then Brett has a solo project called The Heat Tape that was pretty cool, like a garagey sort of thing. So it's a super group. It's a bunch of people from a bunch of different bands getting together. So to go back to their roots, Brad and Zach, they were in Minneapolis. They were in the band Rivethead together. They did a tour with the band The Copyrights and really got along with Adam and Brett. And they decided, Zach and Brad decided, let's move to Carbondale, which is where the Copyrights are from, and start a band with them. And so they moved into this house together. It was a dump. You know, it's a punk house. They were practicing in their basement all the time. It was like it had been flooded in the past, so it had lots of water damage. Good old punk dive basement. And they started writing songs together, playing shows, and doing some touring. The band's name comes from a Bob Dylan song. I did read one interview where one of the members was like, I'm not even a huge Bob Dylan fan. And I know that if I would have said this name is from a Bob Dylan song, they would have said no. Because they just would not have wanted to do that. So he kept it in his hat. And I think the other guy was like, yeah, I would have vetoed that one.
It is a song from John Wesley Harding. It's a 67 record, and that would have been what else is on that record? There's something notable on that record. Oh, all along the Watchtower.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe not as much. I mean, every single song on this record has its own Wikipedia page, but that's Bob Dylan.
Yeah. So they live in Carbondale for a year and a half, and then they're like, all right, we're good. Brad moves back to Minneapolis. Zach joins Off With Their Heads and starts touring with them. He eventually winds up back in Minneapolis. And then Adam moves to Chicago. So he's from Chicago initially, so he moved back there. So the band is now spread out, different parts of the country. Makes it harder to get together. One thing that I read multiple interviews, and one of the topics they brought up the most is well, when we get together, it's more purposeful. We get together to do a specific thing. We don't do the usual jam and hang out thing, getting drunk and jamming kind of stuff. We can't just jump on a local show. We can't play locally because we're all spread out all over this, the country. So it helps that whenever they get together, they're just all right, let's go. Let's get in there. We're going to write these songs and record this stuff, and focus, and then they get ready for a tour. So that's kind of the story. The two guys from Rivethead moved to Carbondale to play with the Copyrights guys. Copyrights are still active. Zach starts playing it Off With Their Heads. Dear Landlord is essentially a side project. Copyrights is the main focus, which is why I was very amused by the fact that the Copyrights have less monthly listeners than this one Dear Landlord record does on Spotify. Could that be because it's better than the Copyrights? We can get into that, but
yes. The answer is yes. It's better than the Copyrights.
Yeah. So yeah, it is just a super group that formed briefly, and they would just get together to play shows. They would do some tours occasionally. They would play Fest. They would play Insubordination Fest. That was another big fest that would happen. That festival, you talk about the fest having a specific sound. Insubfest was one sound. It was this Midwest pop punk kind of stuff. That's it. That's the story. That they would play shows, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the story of most bands, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, most bands are boring.
Yeah, yeah.
The stories aren't crazy, and you kind of don't really want them to be crazy because then there's the chance that they do awful things.
Yeah, yeah.
Which, there is a crazy aspect to the Dear Landlord story, but
yes,
that comes into play much later.
Yeah, it is a lot later. Yeah, it is more of a postscript.
Yeah,
but
yeah, because the band really isn't active past a certain point.
Yeah, I think I looked up that Dear Landlord Off With Their Head show in Charlotte. I think it was 2015 when that happened.
That seems about right.
And then I think they played Fest maybe the next year or so. For a while there, the joke kind of became yeah, Dear Landlord is going to come play the same 10 songs they've been playing for a decade already. Which is a joke that you could throw at a couple bands that played Fest. Because there were some bands that only played Fest, and that was their only show every year. Usually the Florida bands. But Timeshares was this band because they had that one LP for a really long time, and they just played songs off of that first record until they eventually started putting more out. But yeah, there were a handful of bands who well, I'm gonna go see them at Fest because they're good, but also I've seen them a bunch of times now do the same thing over and over again. But yeah, it was just like this one-off. And I do remember the record came out and it was an instantaneous like hit. It was like you said, an instant classic. That is what it was. It was like the pinnacle of this kind of pop punk. This D4, Screeching Weasel, a little SoCal thrown in there too. Like it's just a very specific sound there were a lot of bands doing it at this time, which maybe is why it went away because there were so many bands doing the same kind of thing. But this was kind of like head and shoulders above a lot of them. So there's some interesting stuff about the producer. The really interesting thing about him is he also recorded albums by the Soviets, Off With Their Heads, Banner Pilot, and Pretty Boy Thorson. And it is obvious he has a sound. This record from the bottom, like the Banner Pilot records around this time period, the Slow Death stuff, because I don't know if he did the actual Slow Death, but the Jesse Thorson he's in the Slow Death. Like all four of those bands and the records they were putting out around this time period sound identical, like production wise, and they're all playing like similar music too, and they all played with each other. It's just a very overlapping sound and style that was happening, and it's just funny to me that it's like the same engineers doing all that.
Yeah,
I'd even
so Orgcore in general is a good spinoff. We need to talk about that before we talk about the rest of the record itself.
Yep.
We say we want a revival. You and I are like, we've been pushing this for years. The whole time we've been doing this show, we've just been like, I want more Orgcore bands. I want this sound to be.
We want Chili Willy. Yeah.
Be active. Absolutely. Give me what I really want. You gotta get and put it in you. Which is PBR and I don't know, hating your job. Whatever. Flannel
and beards. I did read like 2 different interviews from around this time, and they were like questions about like, so what do you think? How do you think Fest is gonna be this year? And then both interviews, they're like, there's probably gonna be beards there.
Yeah,
it became a little bit of a self-parody at some point.
I mean, it's fine. Like that's not any more or less of a costume than any music scene has.
Yeah,
you know how many generically goth alt kids I see in Los Angeles now that are fully wearing a costume.
Yeah, it is funny that like I always remember being like, there's gonna be a lot of beards and flannel there. It's like, yeah, it's a pretty like standard clothing that
yeah, like
no one looks like especially bad wearing those things. you know?
Yeah, right. Like, I'm not particularly strikingly handsome, but I can grow an okay beard.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wear clothes that are comfortable and complement my figure.
Yeah.
God forbid we all have body image issues.
Funnily,
want to have a safe place.
The beard and flannel look weirdly transferred to like Southern guys. That became their look somehow.
Yeah.
But it's like it happened.
It was
later.
a lot of people's look. It was Stomp Clap guys' look. You just put a big hat on.
Yeah, a big goofy hat on it. Yeah,
on those guys, and yeah, it's fine. It was. I don't know. I think that the Fest scene got ragged on too hard and got turned into too much of a joke, and it was. There's nothing about it that was any different, like I said, than any music scene, any niche ever is. Like. It's just people in a scene will dress the same way and they'll have similar interests. And I think a lot of the criticism got to being like, like sameness. And it's like, how many jangle pop bands are there right now that sound the same?
Yeah.
How many power pop bands sound the same? Like, I don't know. It's fine. Every Fat Rack band sounded the same, and those bands all still have careers.
Yeah, they're still active. A lot of them. Take it to modern day. All the stompy hardcore stuff that's happening right now.
Yeah.
They're all doing very similar stuff.
Yeah. People just do the same things. It's really not.
They're called trends.
Yeah. They're not even necessarily trends. It's just like, I don't know. People arrive at the same conclusions or I don't know. I mean, it's just like it's like pop music is all made by the same 20 people.
Yeah.
And I mean, not everything needs to be a boundary pushing, completely new and novel creative expression. Like it's fine to just have someone else's individual personal experience as a human being. That's what punk is supposed to be about. And I think, that's a lot of what rubs me the wrong way about it, how it got turned into a joke. And it's like, yeah, the barrier to entry is low. Like, you just need to learn how to play your instrument well enough to play these songs and have something remotely relatable to say in your lyrics. And it got, I don't know, it just got pushed to the corners of the internet and press. It just wasn't dignified. It wasn't respected. It wasn't really given a fair shake because it wasn't doing enough new and unique and individual things. And like, but very clearly, as you can see, there's 12 to 30,000 people that still listen to this music on a regular basis. That's a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's at this time, it was very much a lot of this kind of stuff. A lot of the very off with their heads Dillinger 4 inspired stuff. You know, you had slight variations with the Northeast stuff with like the ergs and the measure up there, but they were all kind of playing in the same realm. Like that was the big popular sound at this time. It would get then replaced by like the post Latterman, influenced bands with your Iron Chic, Reviver, like springing up a whole nother wave of bands doing that Long Island style punk sound. It happens. I mean, I don't think it's as obvious anymore when you look at Fest. I think it's because there's not like this one particular punk sound that's very dominant at the moment.
Now, if you wanted to say it's a boys club, that was good. That was a fair criticism. That was happening at the time. People were making those, comments, but mostly that was coming from people within. It was Lauren Measure, telling people to put their shirts back on because some people can't take their shirts off.
It's Erica Freya's telling let the women go to the front, and take that guy's shoes who's crowd surfing.
And like that's the thing is like, sure, it was a bunch of guys and it was guys being dudes a lot of times. Fine, good dude backed hard certainly was an issue in that scene as well. And like, but also like the people I know that are like mostly of the like fuck that guy, when you hear it about accusations, were guys in that scene. And like the most like the earliest experiences of like trans people being included that I encountered were in that scene.
Yeah, like playing really big parts in bands and just like being part of the scene, like whether it just be at the shows with you side by side or even like doing stuff like running labels, doing merch, doing all that kind of stuff. Punk rock was one of the most inclusive areas that I have ever experienced at that point. And like you said, like with your Lauren Measures and your Revivers, really pushing like these really strong messages. I feel like the punk scene, it was a boys club, and I guess ultimately it still kind of is. They also learned more in that scene, I feel like, than any other scene I've seen or been a part of. Like, hardcore is still mostly dudes. I mean, there's still women at shows, but like it's still primarily guys. And that scene was like, okay, I hear what you have to say, and we're going to take that to heart and actually try and make a difference. Because if you go to Fest now, I mean, it's been a few years since I've been, but even in 2019 when I went, it's a pretty good split of, it's not just all guys anymore, Even it used to be in the crowd, it wasn't really so much like all guys. On the stage it was for the most part. But now it's like, I'm not going to say it's 50-50. It probably is still more male dominated because it is the music industry, and that's just kind of what happens. But it's so much better than it used to be. Yeah. And that's a group of people that actually like listened, which I think is important.
Yeah. It was, I felt like it was, okay, fair enough. Yeah, you're right. That is something that's an unconscious bias. And now that I have had it pointed out, and I'm going to be an empathetic person, and I'm going to work on it.
Right.
That more than any place I've ever been in music, like, I don't know. It's just, and also it's just like, but also like, let's let dudes have a space to, be in touch with their emotions and be vulnerable with each other about their struggles, like, and not bottle it all up or turn it into violence.
Yeah.
Like hardcore, not encourage the toxic masculinity.
struggling moments. We can't do anything, the fucking joke is we're winning when you blink. In struggling moments, left you with victory.
So I was gonna throw out No Idea in 2009. What are
Okay.
they doing at this time? So the same year that this album comes out, it's mostly 7 inches at this stage for most of these artists, but there are a couple LPs in here. But just everything that they put out that I thought was recognizable: The Holy Mountain, Black Tusk, Good Luck, Into Lake Griffey came out that year. The Ergs, I believe it was a split. Yeah, the Ergs and the Measure did a split together. The Copyrights had an EP or a split that year. There's a Marked Men split, Small Brown Bike compilation. Chris Waller and the Ship Thieves did their second LP. This Bike is a Pipe Bomb did Convertible, I believe. North Lincoln, the ska band. The Bomb released their second album, Land Speed Everything. Which, if you look at all those records, it's a little bit of everything, right? We got your
Yeah.
crust, we got your stoner, we got your like kind of whatever you call good luck. I never really figured out. You got your pop punk, your marked men, your orgcore, folk punk, ska, 80s style Chicago punk. Yeah, a little bit of everything. So,
Kind of everything that played Fest.
yeah. No Idea was pretty good about variety and the type of stuff they were put out. And the way No Idea has been kind of culturally shunned post everything with that label has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I get the problems that people had with No Idea,
Yeah.
specifically from the band's perspective and just being like, where's our money? And there's like, lots of stuff going into that. I don't think there was as much money to go around as people claimed, but also I think that means you're not being very good business people by doing that. But they were an important label, and I just don't like that it's just been like, fuck No Idea. It's like, I mean, yeah, sure, but you know what they
Yeah.
put out too, right?
Yeah,
historically. Very
yeah, like
important.
I don't think that they're like a safe place to do business anymore, but the legacy of the label,
Yeah. And the thing is,
frustratingly overlooked now. Yeah.
it's a common thing. Like, just because these punks started a label and started a business didn't mean they automatically became good at business. Like, maybe you shouldn't have gone so in depth, as far as you did, but Jello Biafra was bad at business. That's why he got those Dead Kennedys records taken away from his label,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a thing.
But we
Punks
still
aren't-
talk about alternative tentacle bands.
Historically, yeah. I mean, they still exist, but nobody talks about the new stuff. But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, No Idea still exists, but it really just now seems to exist to repress the same 5 records over and over again. Do you get No Idea emails still?
No, I don't think so.
On a weekly basis, you'll get an email from them that says, we're repressing that Sam I Am Control Sessions LP. We're repressing I Hate Myself for song. We're repressing that Defiance Ohio. It's the same 5 fucking records they keep repressing on like a monthly basis. I don't know why. They're still selling, I guess. You wouldn't repress it if you still had a bunch of copies, but I don't get it.
Another important and its impact overlooked in terms of probably why we have less orgcore now. No Idea wasn't putting out all of the stuff that fits this sound,
Right.
but they were distroing all of it.
Yeah, they were.
You could get all of it from No Idea. You could pay No Idea and expect your records to show up.
Yeah.
And you could find probably everything you were interested in that you wanted. You could get stuff from small labels. You can get it all at one time. You can put in an order for 5 LPs. So you're not paying shipping for a bunch of individual orders from every little independent label that you wanted to buy records from. With No Idea being kind of tanked as a label, and particularly as the distro is what hurts the most to have lost. It can't all be picked up by Asian Man Records.
Well, he doesn't even distro that much anymore.
Mike's mom can only pack so many records.
Yeah, I don't think Asian Man does the distro like they used to. Like,
No.
honestly, distros are kind of dead.
Yeah, they are.
Revelation still has a pretty good sized distro. Death Wish still does a fair amount of distro, but it's like specific labels that they just work with regularly.
But you know what? I don't know why. I don't know why they're dead. How many independent bands are out here struggling?
Yeah, what was it? Who was it that had a distro that like a fire destroyed like all their stock?
I
think-
don't remember who that was.
I don't remember who that was. I remember Animal Style, I think, lost a bunch of stuff because like they were distroing through whoever this was. I think like No Sleep used to distro too, and they were another one that just stopped paying bands. I think that became the problem is these distros weren't paying
Yeah.
the labels. Interpunk,
Which
trash.
why aren't you paying for them up front?
It's fair. Yeah.
Just buy them wholesale, like a record store does.
Yeah. I mean, that's what
You're
record
just
stores
an
do.
online. You're just an online record store. Is all a distro is.
Yeah. I mean, we know people that were like international, like Dr. Good Friend Corey. Like he used to go to Fest every year with a giant list of records and bought them all from No Idea at the the flea market because they had everything that he was looking for at one stop shop because
Yeah.
the shipping was outrageous, still is from the the US to Canada. So the distro was a big deal. The No Idea distro was a big deal.
Is this where I quit my job and start the Punk Lotto distro? I just go get a storage unit and a bunch of record mailers. It's the marketing is the part. This is the hard part. You got to get people to find out that you have this stuff for sale.
I think that fire and then like the ones not paying out, I think it scared off a lot of bands and labels from distroing stuff. But also it used to be like labels would just trade more. And I don't think that's happening as much either.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, Better Melody, he would be like, I'll trade you these LPs for that LP.
Yeah.
And move
Yeah.
some of your stock out.
Yeah, it used to be pretty common. Not as much anymore, but
I don't know. I mean, from the DIY punk distros blasting us in the ass to the Spotify's and Bandcamp's blasting us in the ass, like, we're not better now than we were then. I think it's more of a struggle for people now.
yeah.
But I
We'll
think
throw in
you
the
can
fact
get
that-
people signed up to a newsletter and be like, here's what's new in the distro.
Yeah.
Pay for ad space in what magazines still exist, and just take an accounting class.
Yeah. I think that's the problem. Nobody took an accounting class, and that's why this all fell apart. It's because everybody's just like, I like punk music and records, so I'm gonna start selling them. It's like, all right, what you got your tax forms together? Oh,
Yeah. Huh? Taxes.
you got contracts for what you're gonna pay these people?
It's not
What?
a big contract. It's just an invoice.
Contracts aren't punk.
It's literally you pay your invoices. Net 30.
And if you can't afford to pay them this month,
If they
don't put
can't-
out something new.
Yeah, if they don't pay the invoice, if the distro doesn't pay the invoice, then you don't ship them anything else.
Yeah.
The first time.
Yeah. Don't keep sending stuff and then just like, well, I still haven't been paid yet. It's like, well, stop sending them.
Accounting is money Legos. It's easy. I took 2 semesters of it. I was bad at math. I took the same math class twice.
Yeah.
So,
Dear Landlord.
Dear Landlord, Dream Homes.
Yeah. Okay. So revisiting it, what did you think?
Instant classic for a reason?
I put it on, and the first, I live in hell. Like, oh, right. That's right. That is what this record is. And I'm hooked immediately. I am just like, fuck yeah. I'm singing along to the album in a record that I haven't listened to in 7-8 years, maybe more than that even. I was like instantly thrown back in time. I was amazed at like how well I still knew all of these songs. And the instant classic, yeah, you're right. I think that's why they're still the 12,000 monthly listeners.
Yeah.
It's because it's a fucking great record.
I put
And
it on. I put it on, and like I had said before, like it wasn't as much of a regular rotation for me when it came out. I didn't get super into them. I saw them, but wasn't listening to them all the time. I put this on, and I'm like, hell yeah, I know that. Lake Ontario. I know that. It's like, huh. I absorbed this one atmospherically. It's great. I mean, it scratches that itch. It's what, it's the sound I want all the time, I don't, and as much as we say we want more orgcore, to truth be told, I don't listen to a ton of this stuff on a super regular basis, but mostly that's because there's not very much of it. There's not quite enough of it. But for some people, apparently,
Yeah.
they can listen to this record at least once a year. Or more. And I mean, my interests, cover a lot of ground, and my listening systems maybe don't allow me to often go back to a lot of stuff. I will say my personal, Spotify algorithm for like a couple of years there got pretty stale, where I was hearing the same stuff too much, which is maybe where I like burned out a little bit on some of the orgcore stuff and kind of wanted to move in other directions in terms of personal listening. But so I'm part of the problem as much as anyone.
Well, part of the problem is they just stopped being new ones too.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a case of like nobody had any ideas anymore. Like they're just like, I don't know what can be done that hasn't been done. And it's not that it doesn't have to be like the newest thing ever, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just a case of just like,
I don't know what else needs to be done. I mean, John Reese has been playing the same riffs for 30 years.
Yeah.
Bob Mould's been playing the same riffs for 30 years. Mac McConn's been writing the same riffs and doing the same squeaky voice.
Yeah.
You just keep doing it. Lawrence Arms still puts out records, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. They're
slowly.
slower. They're drips and drabs now, but they'll put them out every couple of years. Alkaline Trio.
Yeah.
Never stop.
Not necessarily a good thing anymore.
Yeah. That Skibo's a weirdo.
He's not pulling it off.
No. Not like he used to.
I bet Dan's so mad that he shaved his head. God damn it. That was my look. Can't be two of us.
Who's drumming with him now? Is it Adam?
Probably still Adam Willard.
He still got hair, I think.
Come back when you got them curls.
Okay, so this record, there are lines and hooks on this record that I just like, I wrote them down whenever I would run across them in the songs. So, what does your dream home look like as the hook, as the chorus of the opening track, I Live in Hell? Incredible. Fuck the landlord, fuck the rent on High Fives. Stand up for yourself on Doormat. 3 to the Beach. I listened to 3 to the Beach 3 times in a row today. It is one of my absolute favorite songs on this entire record. And it's the one, we're not that hopeless. We're not as fucked as you think. Yeah, that song, In Short-Lived Moments.
We're not as hopeless. We're not as fucked as you think. That chorus,
that's an anthem.
That's every Sincere Engineer song.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. God, I love that song so much. Call you baby, call you friend. That one I'm begging for tips. I just fucking love this record. I hadn't listened to it in so long. And just like, it's a 28-minute album. It's short. It's to the point. The songs don't overstay their welcome. They're very similar sounding songs. Like every song is pretty much like the same kind of like like just same driving thing. That is the style, though. It is the sound that they're going for. It's what copyright songs sound like. It's what Off With Their Heads songs sound like. It's that same driving thing. It's all comes from Screeching Weasel, It's very much that. And D4. I was listening to this and I was like, here's my ratings for every single song on this record. You ready? 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, 4.5, 4.0, 5 stars, 4.25, 4.5, 4.5, 5 stars, 4.5, 4.25, 4.25. Nothing under 4. I just was in love with it. The whole fucking thing. Every track, I was just like, so good. Rosa, amazing song. Really, it doesn't slow down until like maybe like Landlocked or Doormat. And then it picks right back up with 3 to the Beach, in Park Bench. Goodbye to Oakland. Yeah. There's some little notes in here as well. They do a cover of Whiskey and Records, which is a Saltines song. And the Saltines are interesting because they were a Minneapolis band in the 90s. They were going to record like a 7-inch. I think they did record the 7-inch little EP. And then it like never came out. They were like one of those local bands that were really hyped. And people were like, this band's so good. I can't wait to hear it. They recorded and then I guess they broke up and then they never put it out. It does eventually come out in like 2014. So you can hear it now. But to me, that says Dear Landlord, or some of the guys in the band at least, they knew the songs from this band that wasn't around anymore and hadn't been around for a long time. But they still knew the song well enough to cover it. Before maybe there was a tape or something that existed and just never had an official release, maybe just a bootleg or something that went around, but to the point where they could cover it. And like members of that band went on to play in like Emily goes on to play in Cleveland Bound Death Sentence, and some of the other members go on to play the Soviets. So it's very much it's the band before the other bands, the bigger bands. And then there's a song on here written by Grath Madden, who is the guy from the Steinways and Houseboat and like a billion other bands. A guy who I never liked his songs or his bands because I just didn't like his voice. But he wrote the song Lost Cause, which is right after Whiskey and Records. So there's some fun little stuff there. And so like, yeah, just listening to it, I was like, yeah, it holds up. It holds up really well. If it doesn't hold up for you, I could see it maybe being because it's like derivative of what was already happening at the same time. And of the bands that they were actually in, you know?
There's so many undeniable hooks on the record, though.
Right.
I think the best, like, most likely reason that it wouldn't hold up is just from overexposure.
That was my concern, because it was one that I listened to a lot. And I thought maybe I'm not going to like it as much because I listened to it too much.
But when was the last time you listened to it?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't give you an exact... I mean, I can maybe look at my last FM, but there's a good chance it's not even in there. Let's see. Out of curiosity. At least the last time it was scrobbled. I have scrobbled them 98 times total. Apparently in 2023, I scrobbled one song from the record, so I don't know what that... Dream Homes was the one but I don't have any scrobbles until 2012. Now, I don't know that that's actually true, but that's all I have collected here. 2010, I listened to it 43 times, or 40, including all the plays, the tracks. But so 2009, 2010, I was listening to it at the peak. Which that makes sense. It was new to the record. I listened to it a lot when it was new. And then I would have listened to some other stuff they'd done. But I remember when they did that split with, is it the Copyright split? Is the last split they did? Where is it? Because they did a split with Off of Their Heads and then the split with Chinese Telephones before the LP. Oh, it was a split with the Dopamines. Right. That's what came out after. And I remember those songs being like, that's okay. I didn't like those songs as much as the LP. So yeah, that's kind of it though. Like I listened to it a lot in like a 2-year period, and then I would occasionally sprinkle it in a little bit after that. But then, yeah, most likely my exposure to them would be like seeing them live. You're seeing them play in Charlotte was probably the last time I actually actively maybe listened to them because I was there in person. But I remember then singing along with it, Should we get into the postscript?
Yes. I do think we kind of have to.
Yeah. So they just kind of go on doing stuff. But because the band is a side project, it's not a priority. They play festivals, they do some touring, but new music is not really on the horizon. Like we don't know of anything happening at this time. I don't know exactly at what point Zach is out of Off With Their Heads. That's a band with like a really big rotating cast of people. So I don't know if he's like in the band the entire time or if he leaves at some point. He may not have been in the band anymore by this point. So in 2017, did not realize it was that recent. Zach Gontard, lead singer, guitarist. He's also the main songwriter. He's arrested for murder. Now, we'll explain a little bit more. So he sold heroin to someone in St. Louis that person then wound up overdosing and dying. Minnesota has one of those laws that says if someone dies as a result of you selling them the drugs, you are, you could be held responsible for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those tough on crime kind of ways of trying to stop drug problems instead of, treating the cause of addiction.
Yeah. The sellers aren't the reason why people are addicted usually.
Yeah. They're just selling something that people want.
Yeah.
Not to say drug dealers are all good people.
No. They're
not always, but oftentimes they're users themselves supporting a habit.
Yeah. I do think that's the case with Zach. Because if you read some of the lyrics on the record, there's a song about like getting some dope and then like talking about somebody else who's like addicted and then Rosa, I think, or maybe it's a different song, but we didn't talk about the lyrics. Lyrically, it's a depressing record if you go read it because it's about how shitty their lives are and how they all live in bad. They are called Dear Landlord for a reason. They all live in like really bad situations and like living in punk houses and in basements and just everybody's got substance abuse problems. Like bad lives. Being these particular people, not a great time in their lives. But yeah, so I think Zach maybe was suffering from some addiction as well. But so he sells this. They say that there's a high chance that there was fentanyl in it, and that's what killed him. That happens a lot, cross contamination and the dosages and all that kind of stuff getting mixed in and wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's stepped on, whatever.
Yeah.
Probably coming from the distributor anyway.
So yeah, he pleads guilty to second-degree manslaughter, and he is actually sentenced to only 1 year in a Minnesota workhouse program, which is like basically like teaches you how to do a trade, like farming, construction. One of the ones was like golf course maintenance. Like, okay, can I have that one? That one seems the easiest. So he gets that, and he has to go through drug treatment while he's in prison. He was only given a year due to him being the middleman in this situation.
Right.
So yes, he's the guy who sold it to him, but he's not the one who packaged it and gave it to him to sell and distribute. So he's, I guess, more the distributor than the actual producer.
Yeah, he's the seller. Right.
Yeah. The person who did, give Zach the drugs to sell got 6 years manslaughter. Zach also participated. He didn't resist. He kind of was just like, yeah, I'll help out. I saw one comment on Reddit that was like, he snitched. Like, all right, cool. I mean, I know ACAB. I get it.
I mean,
somebody died though.
Most people in that situation are just gonna cooperate. Like,
yeah,
I don't know, man. It's your life.
Yeah. So yeah, he gets like a year. Obviously he's released. I think I read something that said it was like he got 18 months with time served too. So that's probably the other 6 months might have been leading up to the trial, but he was out. He was out, a year after the sentencing. So probably would have been free, probably 2018, 2019. He hasn't done anything else as far as we know. According to Ryan Young on his podcast from Off With Their Heads, he claims that Dear Landlord had recorded a second album around Fest 13, which would have been 2014 when it happened. And it had just been sat around waiting to be released. But then Zach's arrest got that basically permanently shelved. But it's like that was 2014 and he got arrested in 2017. So that's a long time for it to sit. Unless just somebody was just like, you're not an active band. We don't want to put it out. Man, that's the only thing I could think of. It's just,
are you guys going to tour to support it? No, probably not.
Yeah. Which they did that tour in 2015 with the Slow Death. So they were doing tours and shows. Yeah, I guess it's a case of you're not active. It's probably why it sat for as long as it did. But yeah, supposedly there's a whole second album. Maybe it's just not very good either, and that's why they haven't rushed to put it out. But also, it is also a case of with Zach not doing much else after the arrest that I don't know that anyone would want to put it out. And that is something I kind of want to talk about too. Do we think part of this I'm not listening to Dear Landlord as much. Even when you were choosing the record, you were trying to remember what happened too. You'd be like, is this a record we should talk about? I think it's fine to talk about. I mean, we're doing an episode on it now, but I think the situation that happened, yes, it's sad. And it's an example of someone who's in a really bad place in their life, but it was an accident. And an accident is an accident. It's not, it's a little bit more involved because he did sell him the drugs, but also it's still an accident. It'd be like if we were we can't talk about Off With Their Heads anymore because, they drug that woman with their trailer accidentally.
Yeah.
And it was proven to be accidental, no jail time or anything like that happened, but
yeah. I don't feel like it's when you reminded me what it was, I was like, yeah, that's fine. I don't feel like that's even I don't feel like that's the same as some of the stuff that we've done on the show or stuff we've passed on the show where it's I don't think it's the same thing as brand new being a serial statutory rapist. Yeah. Being someone who's using their band as a means to groom teenagers. It's not. And I mean, even that stuff, I don't think the dude from Dear Landlord should have gone to prison for it. I don't think, I don't think even carceral justice is necessary in the instances of sexual violence. I think carceral punishment is not good.
Right.
Across the board. But you probably shouldn't tour with your band that you used as a way to get teenagers to have sex with you anymore. I don't think you get to come back to that career, one thing I did think about
is, I mean, clearly he had some issues. He went through that drug treatment program. He, sings about having issues in, the lyrics of this record. So maybe there is just a really high chance of he can't be part of this scene anymore.
Yeah, that's possible too. He might just not want to because it's like, yeah, all of those songs are about a shitty time in my life that resulted in me going to prison. And I don't blame him for that.
Right. And then also like being around, being in that scene, like you're around drinking pretty regularly,
Around drugs.
That is a thing that is not talked about, especially when it comes to like the fest. Doesn't really come up that often. But like Patty used to joke about doing cocaine at fest. And like, I think he did. I don't know if he's doing it as much anymore, but I think he was pretty fucked up at fest.
We were going to fest with straight edgers. We weren't seeing the blow.
No, we weren't seeing it. It was there. Yeah, it just wasn't. We kind of have this like vision of what fest is, and I think what we think of is like the older fest people who are just like, we got kids, like those kind of people.
This is my one weekend a year.
Yeah, we never went to the Purge, though. That was that thing that happens every year at Fest at this hotel where everybody who bought alcohol, like too much alcohol, got together and like shared all their alcohol at this hotel. We never went to that. That's not our scene. There's probably blow there. But like Chicken from Dead to Me talked about, Fest is hard on his sobriety. Like that was a thing he talked about from the stage.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for some people, it's hard. So maybe just being like around that kind of stuff is just like, I can't do it. It might trigger me, I might spiral, I might, relapse or something along those lines. So I could see that. Zach does have one credit though, post arrest. He appears with some like, as just vocals on a record by the band Robot Bachelor, which is a Grath Madden band from the Steinways. He plays guitar, vocals, and bass. Who else is in there? We got Luke McNeil playing drums on there. This came out in 2023. Yeah, it's the guy. Luke McNeil. He played in the Copyrights. So it's got some vocals. Alyssa Curry from Attic Salt is in there. Danny Bailey from. Oh, that's Danny. Oh, yeah, Jabber. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that is. It's a
Danny
record
with glasses.
Yeah. So it's a Grath band. So if he's singing most of it, I'm probably not going to like it. The record's called The Second Third Houseboat Album. So it's a spinoff of Houseboat. So Friends, I guess that's why he contributed to it. Or maybe it's an old recording for all I know. I don't know exactly. I don't know any details about this, but that's kind of it. There's a digital version from 2018. Okay. And he's on that. So that came out April 2018. So there's a chance this was recorded before he's credited as Intruder Black on that initially. There's not a Black Intruder and a Mass Intruder, is there? I think it might just be a joke name.
I think that's a joke.
Because this came out in 2018, so maybe they're like, maybe we don't put Zach's name on there. Maybe we call him something else. Because I think that it was a thing. I think that was a concern that people had. To be like, do we talk about this band anymore? Do we mention them anymore? It's kind of gross and shitty. I don't know. I don't know what people think of them now. But there's still 12,000 people listening to them on a monthly basis. So those people are over it. Over the issues. I don't know. I feel like if Zach wants to come back and if they want to do Dear Landlord again and everybody else is cool with it, they should be allowed to. I don't think anybody should give him a hard time.
I think there'd probably be a handful of dummies that would try to be like, oh, he killed somebody. Didn't this guy shoot somebody in the head? Or just completely like blow the story out of proportion.
Didn't know what actually happened. Yeah.
Not know the details of it. Not understand that it's just like some kind of like bullshit war on drugs, like sentencing guideline.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I don't know.
I think most people that probably like know the details of it are like, yeah, it's kind of weird and unfortunate, and I'm sure he feels maybe conflicting emotions about it, but whatever,
Yeah, I would be curious to kind of get the other people in the band's thoughts. I don't think there's been any interviews that it ever came up though. It's like copyright.
I wonder if they preface those interviews. Like, don't ask us about Zach.
I mean, maybe there's a chance, but we could ask Grath because he had no problem putting Zach's name on that 2023 version of the record. Maybe he would be like, oh yeah, he's doing great. He just doesn't want to do music anymore. I mean, maybe that's what it is, but hard to say until somebody comes out and actually talks about it, which, yeah, I don't know. Maybe the copyrights guys don't want to talk about it. Are they the band that the one member quit the band because they became a Christian? Is it them or the Dopamines? One of the two did that.
I don't remember which one.
I don't either. And they both put out albums last year, and I didn't like either one of them. But I can't remember which band it was. Yeah. Somebody was like, I got sober and I got to quit the band because of Jesus. Oh, I don't remember which one it was. I could look it up, I guess. But yeah. All right. What are final thoughts? Do you think, what was your initial question? I actually forgot how you worded it.
What?
About the record.
What is
the lasting legacy? That's
lasting impact. Lasting impact is it's still a lot of people listening to it.
Yeah, that's a decent amount of numbers. That's good. If you had 12,000 monthly listeners, you'd be very happy.
It's not one of the. I would say it's one of the more important records from well into the orgcore sound. It's certainly fairly derivative. It very clearly comes as fruit of the tree. It's like it's not the seeds of something. It's not revolutionary or groundbreaking, but it's so good that it's just kind of like undeniably important. Instant Classic was I think a fair assessment of it. I think it's persisted for people that have explored that sound, continue to listen to that music now. It's kind of one that's going to come up pretty early, I feel like. If you were to start somebody, if you were to give somebody an orgcore starter, I think this one deserves its place, despite how late it comes into that sound. I think you could say, like, yeah, this is where it progressed, and like this is a really significant record.
Yeah.
Kind of everybody knows it,
Yeah, I think it's just a shining example of this sound and this era. It's a one and done. They didn't intend it to be that way, but it was a side project too, and people like it more than the ongoing bands that result, like the copyrights, like not as good as this Dear Landlord record. And they have way more records and less monthly listeners. Like I think it shows you like how strong this is, because 10 years ago, that number would be way higher than 12,000. It would probably be 20 to 30. They'd be probably in D4 numbers.
Yeah.
Now D4 numbers 10 years ago would also probably be higher too. They'd probably be in the 50s, but
or more.
Yeah. They might be in the 80s, like Lawrence Arms. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lawrence would be over 100 a decade ago. So yeah. Let's give it a rating and get on here.
I'm going to go with like a 4.25 because I do think it does lose me a little bit on the back half.
Yeah.
It starts to just kind of blur together.
That front half is so strong. Yeah. I'm going to give it, I'm going to go higher. I'm going to say it's a 4.75. I think the tail end is like the weakest, but yeah. Because on the back half of the record, it's really just if 3 to the Beach is the halfway point. Yeah, Whiskey and Record is probably the best song on the back half of the record. So, and it's a cover. So yeah, it's not a 5-star. It's close, but it's not quite there. Yeah, but excellent album. All right, well that will do it for us. So thank you all so much for listening. You can follow us on all forms of social media at punklautopod, punklautopod@gmail.com for your mailbag questions. Our voicemail line 202-688-PUNK and patreon.com/punklautopod. So get at us with any questions. We will read them or play your messages on the show. So thank you so much, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.